what's going on, everybody? It's Ian. It's time for another episode of Native Film Talk. For once, it's been a while. No interview, no guests, just your boy Ian. And we're going to hang out for a bit. We're going to talk about some Native news. But I think most importantly, today is August 9th. Today is my birthday. Today, Reservation Dogs, episodes 1 and 2 premiere on Hulu. It's an FX show with showrunner Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi. If you're living under a rock and you haven't heard of this show, it's a real simple show. It's like it takes place on the Oklahoma Res. It's like 4 indigenous teens. Their best friend just died. They used to be a team of 5, and their dream of getting away off the Res, running away to this mysterious, faraway dreamland to them, California. And they're going to achieve that through stealing, robbing, and in order to get enough cash to just flew the coop, to just get the hell out, get out of Dodge. And you get a glimpse into res life and what that's like. And the first 2 episodes, the first one is how they get their name, Res Dogs. The second episode is about the IHS clinic. I mean, they call it Indian Clinic, NDN Clinic. And I'm not going to give any spoilers of the show. God, I just saw it and it's so freaking good. And you need to just go watch it right now. I mean, that's all I have to say about it. Just go watch it. It's next level. I mean, I'm gonna give a real quick. Like I said, no spoilers, but this is the best shit I've ever seen in terms of like modern day representation. From the love of hot chips to Skoda and Studis to native hip hop, native rappers, like the real IHS experience, like Indian Health Service. There's no poverty porn. People are poor, but it's just life. Like nobody is kicking the can down the road of like, God, I wish I wasn't living on this reservation. I wish I wasn't surrounded by meth and drugs and, systemic oppression and blah, blah, blah. And generations of this and generations of that, and fighting for my language every day is such a hard thing to do, and blah 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 blah. Same shit we always see. We don't see any of that. They talk and they joke about meth heads. They joke about meth gangs because meth is everywhere. They joke about everything. That's just casual conversation. They joke about language. They joke about tricksters. They joke about spirits. And speaking of spirit, Dallas Coldeuth, originally from the 1491s, he recasts, recalls back to some of his roles he was in the 1491s, and he plays a character. His name is Spirit, and it's really like this spirit that comes and talks to Bear, who's one of the main characters in the show. But he's next level. His comedy writing is evident that there was nothing but native writers on this show. He is easily my favorite character in this show to date. I mean, it's only 2 episodes, but I'm positive that he's a recurring character and he's going to just keep killing it because he's up there with Bumper from Blood Quantum and Magua. It's only been 2 episodes. I've only seen 50 minutes of this, show up to date, but good Lord, he is so good. The writing, his comedic timing, fucking everything. Like Dallas Goldtooth kills it. I hope someday I can get him on the show so I can talk to him about his 1491's work and just this show in general. But his character is comedy gold. Speaking of comedy gold, too, you have Bobby Lee. If you're not familiar with Bobby Lee, he's a very specific brand of comedy. He's like a lot like Your Mom's House, Tom Segura, in a way where it's like either love it or you don't. And his podcast, Tiger Belly, with his girlfriend, like, it's just great. If you love Bobby Lee, you love him. If you don't, you really don't care for him at all. But what I think is cool is because Bobby Lee has like stans, he has like hardcore fans, they're going to show up and watch this show just for Bobby Lee, just because they hear about Bobby Lee being in something. And it's exciting because they're going to get great content. Like non-natives are going to flock to watch Reservation Dogs just to see Bobby Lee be Bobby Lee. And I think that's what's exciting is that like just non-natives aren't going to watch this. Like a lot of people are going to come and see this. And I think that's what's the most exciting thing about this. This is going to run for 8 episodes. The first 2 are out right now. It's on Hulu only from what I understand, even though it's an FX feature, even though it's an FX TV show, it's only available on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, go check it out. Like just get the show. It's a lot like Rutherford Falls where there's a little bit of I actually don't know. I've always had a Hulu subscription, so I really don't know if you need to pay. I think so. I think you need to pay for this, unfortunately, much like Rutherford Falls. But go check this thing out. This thing it's amazing. It's amazing. Like just go watch it because good God, this is such a good show. this makes me just like so happy, like almost on the verge of tears. Like I can't wait to get off and later on today and talk about it again. Like I'm using my lunch break today to record this episode. I just had to. I watched those first 2 episodes like first thing in the morning. I'm just like, fuck, I got to talk about this. This is great. The love of hot chips. Like they don't give it a name, but like as a native, as a res native, you don't even gotta be res. As a native, you just have this love for hot chips. Like they just demonstrate how like there's just this culture of like hot chips. Hot Cheetos, Tom's Hot Fries, Chester's Hot Fries, Flamin' Hot Munchies, Flamin' Hot Cheetos Puffs. Like there's Takis. There's no reason I should know all of these hot chips off the top of my head, but like hot chips are life, bro. And I love that there's an entire like segment, a through line with the hot chips and the IHS hospital experience. Like Janice Schmieding makes an appearance in this. She plays like the IHS receptionist and she does a fucking bang up job. And it highlights so much of the crap that we go through and so much of the beauty of being native. The brotherhood, the sisterhood, the bonds that you make with random elders in the community, the bonds you have with everybody in your community, even with the police, even though you hate them, and you could care less for them. I love it. I love it. All right, that's enough of my Reservation Dogs chat, but just go check it out. You need to go watch it today. And so the next thing, which I was going to talk about with this episode, I built this native news episode of just a native news update. It's really just everything that I've seen. I follow the right people. I say the right people, but I follow enough people that are in the industry that they just share a bunch of stuff, in their Instagrams, in their Instagram stories, and through the journalists that I follow. Like stuff just gets shared, and I realized, like, what, everyone might not know about all this stuff, so I'll just compile it all in one episode for you all to listen to. And if I'm just repeating everything that I apologize. But if there's something you know about or don't know about, let's talk about it. So I'm going to talk about Grey's Anatomy, the Native American or the Native Run episode in the latest season 17. Talk a little bit about Molly of Denali, just so I can bring up Spirit Ranger, the upcoming Netflix show, and then also Rutherford Falls, the happenings there. I'm going to talk about Resident Alien for a bit. I'm going to talk about The Ice Road, the most recent Netflix film, one of the more recent ones that came out with Liam Neeson, Martin Sensmeyer, and Amber Midthunder. And then I'm going to talk about Dexter, New Blood, because there's a little bit of native representation in that as well. And I'll mention Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese flick, and Dark Winds, the TV show that just got released, or actually just got announced. It's an AMC television show. And then I'll talk about, the last thing I'm going to talk about is going to be Avatar: The Last Airbender. So believe it or not, Avatar: The Last Airbender is going to be launched again as a live action. So we remember the M. Night flop of the Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that was pretty awful for many reasons. There was just like a bunch of white people playing like these Asian and indigenous roles, and it just wasn't good. It's M. Night. He either knocks it out of the park or he strikes out in a bad way, and he struck out in a bad way on Avatar. That's arguably one of his worst films that he's ever done, but they're going to redo this as a TV show. And they're past like, oh, we're going to thinking about this idea, we're kicking it around. No, they've already cast people. And those of you that are Last Avatar: Last Airbender fans like me, like, the Northern Water Tribe, the Southern Water Tribe, like, they're natives. They're natives. And sure enough, they did. They cast natives for Sokka and they're not doing Korra, but for Sokka and Katara. Sokka and Katara, they cast them as like native people. When they in the casting call, they said, "Hey, we're looking for 2 native indigenous people to play these roles in the Last Airbender live action TV show." So I'm going to talk about that. And the last thing I'm going to close out is just something interesting. Like I said, I follow a bunch of people that are in the film industry that are, in the film industry, and they bring up people like other people's work. And there are 2 people that I had never heard of that I know about now because I follow them on Instagram. So anytime I do a native news update or just at the end of an episode, I'll just try to be like, hey, here's a native actor I never heard of, because I know a big problem that we have is it's the same fucking people over and over and over. Good for Gary Farmer, good for Adam Beach, good for Wes Studi, but we see them all the time. So where are the new blood? Where's these new people? Martin Sensmeyer is born every day. These people are all over the place. So let's talk about them. So I got a couple of people I want to bring up and some of the work that they're doing, some of the stuff they've done. And then also it gives you an opportunity to just go IMDb searching and so be like, what else is this person in that I can see? And then go check it out. All right, everybody. Well, let's get into Grey's Anatomy. So I plan to do an episode on this particular, on this one episode. I plan to do an episode on this Season 17, Episode 15, Grey's Anatomy episode. And why I bring this up is, so this was a big deal because it was the first time that there was native casting, native anything on Grey's Anatomy. If you're a Grey's Anatomy superfan like I am, you were like waiting for this. You're like, holy shit, I can't wait. But me and my wife, we kind of take breaks from Grey's Anatomy because it's exhausting, it's a lot. And we caught up, you know, we waited to start season 17 for a while. And so we were just 2-3 episodes in, but we got a bunch of spoilers. Like, we know the big stuff that happens. And I'm not going to drop any of those spoilers if you care. But what's interesting is I looked at the episode list of season 17 because they're on episode 18 right now. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, which one is the one with natives? And so I'm scrolling down and I'm reading every single one. I didn't even have to look at the episode detail to see. I saw season 17, episode 15. It was called Tradition. And I was like, let me guess. This is probably the one with natives. And I expanded it. Sure enough, I had a 1 in 18 chance of getting it right. And I freaking picked the one that was in natives just based on the name. And I looked at it. It was just this. You know what sucks? Is 2 years ago, this would have been the shit. This would have been like, oh my god, this is amazing. But honestly, this feels like table scraps now that Reservation Dogs came out. Like, the native representation in this is good, but it's not good enough. It's awesome to see new talent, but it's not good enough. It's good to see Wes Studi back in something, but it's not good enough. Because, once again, we're not going to be recurring. I mean, it's great. Robert Mesa is now an intern. Robert Mesa plays a new intern in the Grey's Anatomy cast. So that's cool that he's going to be in there, but it was never revealed that he was native. Like, James Chi just sounds like a name, like, to some people. But if you're Navajo, you're like, oh, Chi, that's a native last name. That's a Navajo last name. So this is the big reveal where we learn that Robert Mesa, James Chi, you know, he does volunteer work at a local IHS facility. He has like native connections throughout the community. You get a little glimpse into native culture. You start talking about like what's smudging, and they do an explanation on what smudging is. And it's cool because there are newer and people we've seen. There's a newer actor that most of us have never seen, Amelia Rico. You know, she's indigenous and she plays a pregnant person in this episode. It's just right in the middle of COVID, so they're dealing with all the challenges of COVID. You have Tokala Black Elk from freaking way back in the day. I remember him from Skins. He's in this as well. Wes Studi is in this. He is a main focus of who is being cared for in the episode. And then, of course, Robert Mesa, the intern. I was super excited for this episode, and I still am. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on it and say like it's awful. It's after seeing Reservation Dogs, it's like that's the bar now. And like everything else is just, you know, when you have really, really good food and you have like that burger joint in your local town, in your hometown, you've been eating your whole life, you're like, that's good food. And then you go somewhere like San Diego or I don't know, New York, Chicago. You really go to a really big city and go to a really nice restaurant and that knows how to make a fucking burger, and you try a burger, that's your new standard for a burger, and then you immediately look back to all the other burgers you had in your life. You're like, that was it? Like, that's what I was settling on? And for the rest of your life, you drive by that place in your town, you're like, remember when I used to think like that burger was the best in the world? That's how I feel about this episode. Like, it's good. It's good. It's serviceable, you know? But what's crazy is 2 months ago, I was over the moon about this. I was elated about this. But if you've seen it, upcoming episode on this, but I think it's pretty cool to see some new native talent at a show, at a level of a show like Grey's Anatomy. And it's clear that there was native suggestions, but there weren't native writers. Like, there was native consultants on it, there was native talent on it. There's definitely nuances that you can identify that, like, oh, only a native person could have made that suggestion. But it's, you know, I'm going to do an episode on it, so I'll try to not dwell on that too much. Next thing is, I'm always going to plug Molly from Denali. Please, if you got kids, this is the most culturally relevant, like, native kids content out there. It's for kids of all ages. This is a damn near perfect show. This is run by natives. This is acted by natives. It's an animated series. If you haven't seen any of the Molly from Denali episodes, you don't have access to PBS. It's okay, because if you go on mollyofdenali.com, they have culturally relevant games, culturally relevant stories that you can do, activities you can do. There's like Canoe Quest, Beating Art, Denali Trading Posts, like kind of walkthroughs, Sled Dog Dash. Like, it's a lot of fun stuff. And the last thing I'll say is there's a Molly of Denali podcast available on Apple. And it takes snippets from all the episodes. So if you haven't seen any of the episodes, there's like 3 seasons of this podcast. You can go listen, and it's small enough snippets that kids can absorb, 10 to 12 minute episodes. And it takes like segments from the show directly. And it does intros and outros with Molly talking to the audience. And I think it's damn near perfect. Why I brought this up today is there's a segment that leads right into that. I'm going to talk about Spirit Ranger. It's specifically geared toward native youth. Obviously, it's for everybody because Netflix is making this show. This is a show that's going to be produced and released on Netflix. But much like Reservation Dogs, and that's what makes this so exciting, is Reservation Dogs killed it with this native writing, all native writing room, and Rutherford Falls the same way. Now people are like, this whole time, you could have done that. I'm going to do that. And then you juxtapose that with including natives as consultants, you're going to see a big disparity in quality and content. And so Spirit Ranger is ahead of the game in that they already knew this. They had an all-native writer's room. But what's fun about this is it's all native writer's room. And it's also native composers, native voice actors, and native artists. So they're taking it next level in the animated game the same way that Reservation Dogs took a hold of that show and just made it all natives, everything. The showrunner, Carissa Valencia, she's Chumash, and the executive producer is Chris Nee. There's a quote from Carissa about the show, and I quote, "The kids are junior rangers in the park, but they're also protectors of the real world, but also the spirit that lives there. So it's a hybrid of having a foot in both worlds. They have a foot in their tradition, and they also have a foot in the real world as little park rangers." I mean, wow. That's a freaking kids show. As a native person, if you're a native person listening, that two worlds issue that we all have, that we all come to terms with, that we all have this like bouts of depression throughout our lives that leads some people to suicide and alcoholism and drug abuse because it's so difficult to find your footing in what world do I occupy, what world do I feel most at home, what world would my ancestors want me in, what world is going to actually help me provide a living for my family, what world makes sense to me, what world can I actually occupy where I am my true self, who I am supposed to be. Maybe this helps with that for the future generations because it's laid out so eloquently for youth. Like, just that simple description of what the show is, I'm positive like little kids are going to ask questions that I would have never asked to their native parents. And consequently, non-native people will watch that and have questions asked to them that they would have never been asked otherwise. And who knows how this is going to be, and who knows how more of a well-adjusted adult I would have been had I had a show like this as a kid. Instead, I saw Bugs Bunny, freaking shooting from a fort thing, singing 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians, 4 little 5, writing freaking tick marks on a chalkboard, and then saying, and then going back to the chalkboard and be like, oops, that was a half-breed, and he marks a half off of a tick mark. That's the native representation I had in cartoons when I was a kid. So to have shows like Molly of Denali and Spirit Rangers coming out, good on you, Netflix. Good on you, PBS. You guys are leading the way. So this is due to become, or this is coming out 2022. Didn't give a release date. They just said 2022. So sometime within the next 15 months, we're going to be graced with Spirit Rangers, and I freaking can't wait. Rutherford Falls, latest news on that, everybody. We did it. We did it. I say we, meaning everyone listening to this show. I'd like to think we all went and showed out for Rutherford Falls and checked it out and watched the whole season. But season 2 is coming. It got renewed for a season 2. Unfortunately, that's all the news I have. I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but season 2 is here. And because Rutherford Falls has the writer in one of the show episode it has a writer, Tazba Chavez. She also writes on Resident Alien, which also got a season 2 ordered, And I'm going to keep talking about Resident Alien because it's in the same vein as like Rutherford Falls, where it's like, it's not native led, it's not native written, and it's not really native casted. There's a handful of native people in there, like Gary Farmer's in it. That's fucking awesome. But like, it's just natives living in the world. Like, we're just there. It's like Breaking Bad with Jeremiah Batsui, Victor. I know Victor's Navajo. The person is Navajo. Victor has no last name in the show, but he's just existing. He's just a person. He doesn't need to wear a freaking feather in his hair. He doesn't need to have long hair. It's just awesome. So, Resident Alien has Chazba Chavez as a writer and a cultural consultant on it. Has Gary Farmer in it as a recurring character. So please just check that one out. That one's just good. If you have access to watch sci-fi, check it out. To watch sci-fi shows, rather. And next thing I'm going to talk about is Ice Road. Ice Road is a recent Netflix show that just came out. So Ice Road is not anything about natives. It has native people in it, which I think is cool. And Amber Midthunder and Martin Sensmeyer are two natives in it. The focus of the film is Liam Neeson. But this Netflix feature just came out this year in 2021. And really, it's like the blurb about what the movie's about is after a remote diamond mine collapses in the far northern regions of Canada, an ice driver leads an impossible rescue mission over a frozen ocean to save the lives of trapped miners, despite thawing waters and a threat they never see coming. So this ice road is they're driving over this thawing ice road in a big semi carrying a bunch of pipe up to this collapsed mine to try to free these miners. And Martin Sensmeyer plays one of the trapped miners. And Amber Midthunder plays the counterpart to Liam Neeson. So she's in this movie from start to finish. And Martin Sensmeyer, same thing. And they're just people in this. Amber Midthunder's name's Tantu, like Tantu Cardinal. But, like, there is no, like, hey, let's put a feather on you. Hey, let's put you in a Pendleton jacket. Hey, native, get over here. Like, they're just competent people, and I'm going to be very honest, it's okay. It's serviceable. Something to play in the background while you're doing the dishes or making dinner or something. If you like the Ice Road, it's one of those movies that, like, you like it or you think, I just thought, But I would definitely check it out, if nothing else, for Martin and Amber Midthunder, just to watch it, just to check it out, just to see, like, oh my God, they're right next to Liam Neeson. Holy shit, Like, Lawrence Fishburne is in this, and there's natives in here. Go watch it. Morpheus and Martin Sensmeyer in the same film? Hell yeah. So, this next one I'm going to talk about is near and dear to my heart, because I am a massive, massive Dexter fan. And how Dexter ended was always a thorn in my side. To me, it was like one of the greatest TV shows, in my opinion, up until the ending. The ending just destroyed it, because it felt so rushed. It was messy. It was very unlike the rest of the show. The rest of the show was so well thought out, and it just wasn't good. And what's cool is Showtime recognized this, and we're like, hey, it is going to be years later. It's way, way past its done date. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you what you want. We're going to redo it. Much like El Camino and Breaking Bad, there was a lot of unfinished stuff there with the plot, and we're going to finish that loop. We're going to close that loop for you. And why I bring this up is Julia Jones is in it. From Black Cloud, from Rutherford Falls, from Twilight. I mean, Julia Jones, I don't know if she's playing a native in this. It begins where the end of Dexter left off, when he's in the woods, basically as a logger for a living, because he's escaping the law. And so it's leaked in the trailer, in the teaser trailer, that Julia Jones plays the girlfriend of Dexter. And she plays the chief of police. Her name is Angela Bishop, not really a native sounding name, so we don't know if she's actually native, but Julia Jones is like one of the main leads of this TV show. She's going to be she's a native woman. Well, one, she's at least a woman of color in this, because this town has never had a woman chief of police. And chief of police, if she's native, I totally see them playing around with that. But I think it's cool because she's the first person of color, and she's the first woman chief in this little town that Dexter lives in. So, the town isn't too happy about it. based on the things that I've seen online, that's kind of like the information that's given to set up this world for this 10-episode miniseries that's going to close the book on the Dexter franchise. And it's going to start this year in November 7th. So get excited for this, everybody. I don't know how the hell I'm going to watch it. I don't have access to Showtime. So I don't know. We'll have to figure that one out. But I'm a huge Dexter fan, and somehow I'm going to watch this. One, I was already excited because it was Dexter, and so I was watching it because of that, and I was like watching the trailer, and I'm like, that's Julia Jones, what the fuck? And so, Julia Jones is killing it. She's getting a lot of work, and I'm excited to see it. I'm really excited to see it. So everyone keep your eyes out for that, November 7th, the last 10 episodes of Dexter. This next one I want to talk about is Killers of the Flower Moon. If this is probably the most high-profile thing that I'm going to talk about, where it's like non-natives have heard about this for sure. Dexter maybe is up there too, because this is a Martin Scorsese flick. Martin Scorsese is partnering with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jesse Plemons and Robert De Niro, and Brendan Fraser just agreed. He came out of hiding wherever the hell he was to join this movie, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. But this is based on a true story. I didn't know anything about Killers of the Flower Moon, or the Osage murders as it's referred to, but this is based on a book, Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI. That's what this book is called. The FBI was founded in 1908, according to its website, and this takes place in the 1920s. Essentially what happened, and I'm going to, bastardize the story for the sake of this, segment, but basically what happens in the early 1920s, big oil deposits were found on Osage land, Osage County in Oklahoma. And because of the way the law was written at the time, the Osage people who were living on that land were awarded the rights to the profits from those oil deposits. And of course, you get white people, you get Bill Aganas, people in power in the 1920s at the time, seeing dollar signs and seeing people in the way of those dollar signs, because they're like, great, we can get in there and get all that oil, but these freaking Indians are in the way. They're the middleman. We got to pay them to get access to that oil. What if we just got rid of them? And so that's basically what happened. In the 1920s, why this story is called the Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI is this long, drawn-out legal process basically led to the Osage people that were living on that land, the people living on that property, were, had the right to the profits, and they started getting picked off one by one, and in different ways. And that's kind of where I never read the book, but I plan to now that this is going to be coming out, and that's basically what happens, is they start getting picked off one by one, and eventually the FBI gets wind of this. The FBI in the 1920s, like the newly formed FBI, they start doing investigations on this, and they go through the trial. And spoiler alert, because this is actual information that's out there, but there was a man named William King Hale. He was a cattleman. He was eventually he was behind this whole mess, back in the 1920s. And so even though there were confirmed about 20 Osage deaths, there were allegedly, potentially hundreds of Osage people that were killed in the pursuit of this oil money. So it's pretty interesting to see Martin Scorsese take this on. It's freaking amazing. I'm a massive Leo fan. Like, Leonardo DiCaprio, I freaking love, ever since Who's Eating Gilbert Grape. Like, I go way back with him, and it's real exciting to see. I think there was a little bit of controversy around this. There are actually Native people cast in this film, so that's awesome. I think some of the concern is, this is kind of an Osage story because it happens to Osage people. Should Osage people actually be in this? And, we're still waiting on some of the news, but Lily Gladstone, she's a Native actor. Like, there's a few Native people that have been added to this cast up to this point, but right now it's kind of a wait-and-see thing. It's going to be released on Apple TV+, so I'm not sure at this time where things are with COVID if it's also going to be in tandem with a theatrical release, but it's something to definitely keep an eye out for. So Killers of the Flower Moon, definitely keep a pin in that one and be ready to see that within, I would say, during 2022 for sure. Let's go to the next one. Dark Winds, the TV show. So this is pretty recent. This one just came out a few days ago. This is with Kiowa Gordon and Zahn McClarnon. Kiowa Gordon really most notably from the Twilight series, but more recently from Blood Quantum. He played Lysol. I wanted to say Clorox for some reason, but he played Lysol in Blood Quantum, and I loved him in that role. And then Zahn McClarnon from Westworld, from freaking season 2 of Fargo as Hansi Dent, and now he's in Rutherford Falls. He's in Reservation Dogs. He plays the main tribal police officer, Big. Like he's just everywhere now. And so now you have this new TV show, this 6-episode TV show that's going to be greenlit. That is greenlit. What's crazy is this is another Tony Hillerman novel. So Robert Redford's backing this, and George R.R. Martin from Game of Thrones. George R.R. Martin and Robert Redford are producing this. And I was like, what the hell? And it's on AMC. So it's really strange that this is happening, but this 6-episode TV show is supposedly going to have an all-native writer's room, which is awesome. I mean, we're just seeing all-native writer's room after all-native writer room, and we're getting to the point now with the industry where it's like one person isn't enough. Like somebody somewhere has had a serious conversation about representation in all these different facets of directing, acting, producing, and now writing. Maybe we're not quite there yet with producing, but certainly with writing and directing. And it's evident in Dark Winds, because you know who else is an executive producer? Chris Eyre. Chris fucking Eyre. Smoke Signals, Skins, Edge of America. Chris Eyre is an executive producer. And most important, he is slated to direct the first episode. So I kind of left it vague because these Tony Hillerman novels, Robert Redford loves Tony Hillerman novels. He is enamored with Tony Hillerman novels because this is his third time dealing with a Tony Hillerman project. The very first one he did was way back called The Dark Wind. This TV show is called Dark Winds. And The Dark Wind is when Lou Diamond Phillips played a Navajo cop. The second one he did was Skinwalkers. That was with Adam Beach and Wes Studi. That was like a PBS show. Both of those were like PBS, like lower budget, not released on theaters, just like direct to TV PBS features. And it's interesting that the source material, while there is a all-native writer's room, it's still Tony Hillerman source material. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do this, because Tony Hillerman, he gets some stuff right, but it's still a white dude writing about Navajos. And it's just odd, because Kiowa Gordon and Zahn McClarnon, they play two Navajo cops, Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chi. And so what's interesting is Kiowa Gordon, Zahn McClarnon, Lou Diamond Phillips, Adam Beach, Wes Studi. Those are 5 different native people. Well, 5 different people. You remove Lou Diamond Phillips from that. 4 different natives and one other person that have played Navajo cops in all of these movies. None of them are Navajo. And Leaphorn isn't even a Navajo name. I've never heard the last name Leaphorn in my life. Chi, that's everywhere. You can find a Chi as a first name, last name, that's all over the place, because that's like actual Navajo. But Leaphorn, I've never heard that last name in my life. So Tony Hillerman, like I said, he got some stuff right, but it is a lot of... So I don't know, we'll see. Dark Winds, though, super excited about it. I love Kiowa Gordon. I love seeing him in stuff, and I love all of his work. And I'm always rooting for him because he's younger. He's up and coming. I want to see him get a big break and like just tear it up and do something else. But so he's known for something else other than Twilight by non-native people. That's what I want. And so this is exciting. And this is one of the last things I'm going to talk about. But really, this is the last of the native news. And it's Avatar, the Last Airbender TV show. So it was leaked. I don't know if it was leaked. I don't know if this is just a journalism thing. Nah, leaked the cast, the four main roles of the Last Airbender. Blah, 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 blah. I doubt that that's really what happened. But we found out that Zuko, Aang, Sokka, and Katara, they got casted. And if you're unfamiliar with the show, please, please, please go watch this show. It is an animated show. It is a kid's show. It did air on Nickelodeon. It was a Nickelodeon show. Even if you don't like animated shows, this show transcends genre. I would honestly put up there, and I will stand by this. If you go watch the last Avatar, The Last Airbender, and you don't like it, you can gladly put me on blast and say this show is not bad, and Ian from Native Film Talk recommended this to me. Like, this is one of the greatest shows of all time. Greatest TV shows of all time. Hands down. The writing, the acting, the depth, the dimension that every character has, it's insane. In this universe, though, if you're unfamiliar with the TV show, I'll go ahead and give you a quick rundown. In this universe, there's benders. These people are benders of elements. There's also regular people who don't have any of these powers. But what a bender in this world means is they can manipulate one type of element: earth, water, fire, or air. And then later on you can bend metal, but let's just focus on these 4. If you're one of those benders, typically you're a part of a nation, tribe, or community of the same benders. Like, these benders all band together. And if you can imagine these nations of water benders, fire benders, earth benders, and there's somewhat of a martial art where it has a very much like Asian martial art influence. So there's a lot of martial arts aspects into this. But it's weird, though. The Avatar, so why this show is called The Avatar, The Last Airbender, is because the Avatar is someone who maintains harmony among all of the bending. The elements need to be in harmony. And at times, some of the power, very much like in Star Wars, where the power differential can be too high, where one of the elements gets too big, and maybe the maybe the fire benders want to take over the world. The earth benders want to take all the capital. And so the Avatar is there. The Avatar is a living being that is present in every single generation. So there's like lines of hundreds of avatars, and they're all born with different talents. But what's special about the Avatar is they have the ability to bend all of the elements on the earth, and that's very different. So all of this sounds very non-native up to this point. Why does this matter, Ian? Well, it matters because the Water Tribe is native for sure. The Water Tribe, there's a Northern Water Tribe and a Southern Water Tribe, and they very much mimic native nations from the Arctic. They look exactly like it, from their housing to their clothing to their weapons to their spirituality. Like, their influence is there. They don't say, oh yeah, these people are Inuit. They don't say, oh yeah, these people are like people in Nunavut. They don't say that, but you can see it. And there was always suspicion from people who loved the show that they were native people or that they were based off of native people, because the architecture of the firebenders and the earthbenders, they just look very different, and they're very like Asian influence, and they're very much like more Japanese, more Chinese, and so you're like, okay, that's clearly not native. But the waterbenders are for sure native. And then you look at the airbenders, and they're very much like monks. And so they all have this like monk-like appearance for the airbenders. So it's interesting to see how that all blends together. And it's frankly one of the shows that has some of the better, like, I don't know, odd fictional native representation. It's awesome. What's cool though is it's confirmed that they wanted natives for that, because when they casted these roles, so like I said, they casted those 4 main roles: Katara, Sokka, Aang, and Zuko. And what's fun is Sokka and Katara, the casting sheets, I'm going to read those off when they were casting these. I found these online. It said female, 14, Native American of heritage, indigenous to North America. It's fucking awesome. Sokka, male, Native American, character, male of indigenous heritage, indigenous to North America. Fucking awesome. This is great, right? So what's awesome is, and I'm going to butcher her name, and I apologize in advance to this individual because I can't freaking say her name, but she is already been cast as Katara. Her name is Kaya Wentio Tarbell. She's Mohawk. She's in Beans. She is most notably in Annie with an E, Coquit, as she plays a Mi'kmaq character in season 3 of Annie with an E. I'm going to watch that season eventually because there's heavy residential school representation in that film. But in Annie with an E, this individual, she plays Coquit and apparently does a fabulous job. So she is cast as Katara. There's a little bit of controversy, I should say, among Native people with the casting of Sokka, because Sokka is supposed to be a 16-year-old Native kid. And instead, we get an individual who is not native. Seemingly. He is not native, but I don't know if this is a pretendian situation or what. but his name is Ian Owsley. Shout out to Ian. But he has been in a couple things before, like Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, Apple TV Plus's Physical. But he's cast as Sokka, and he does not look native. I mean, I kind of looked him up. I mean, he's barely 18, I think. I don't mean, actually 19 years old. But there's not information on him. He just looks like an ethnically ambiguous person. This guy doesn't seem to be native. And I don't know if that's much of an issue because it is based on a fictional show, a fictional universe. But the casting call specifically said somebody from North America that is indigenous to that land. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. More to follow. I think that's all I'll really say about that one. More to come, more developments. We'll see what happens. But that one was interesting. And yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see more Avatar: The Last Airbender. Freaking love that show. So we'll close out with this. Something different. If you know about these three actors, great. If you didn't, something interesting for you to look into. There are three people that before my last episode, before my last native news update, I should say, that I didn't know about. First one, Amber Midthunder. I interviewed her mother in the last episode. Angelique Midthunder, her father David Midthunder, like they're both in the industry. They met in the industry. Amber Midthunder is their daughter, and she ended up getting into the industry. She's been in Ice Road, the most recent movie I mentioned with Martin Sensmeyer and Liam Neeson. Find that on Netflix. Legion is out as well. It's a TV show. If you've heard of Legion, you're a super fan probably. But yeah, she's in that. And then Roswell, New Mexico. She's in freaking Roswell, New Mexico. That's a great TV show. Like, she was in all these things, and I never heard of her before I started looking to interview her mother. And I'm like, Amber Midthunder, are you serious? Like, that's freaking cool. So, actually, until David Midthunder wrote into the show, I had never heard of Amber Midthunder. I found Amber Midthunder because she's listed as the daughter to Native Midthunder when I was looking up his biography. So shout out to David Midthunder for, getting me onto her. And everyone go check out her work. She's a really great actor. My goodness. And she does a lot of stuff that's like not on the nose native, and she's just a solid actor all around. It's great. Next one that's on Grey's Anatomy, but one to look out for, Robert Mesa. He's currently the native intern playing Jim Chi on Grey's Anatomy, and it's just great to see a native on a massive, massive show like Grey's Anatomy, because those larger shows like that are springboards into something else. Those are springboards into more work, and I'm excited because Robert Mesa is a recurring character on Grey's Anatomy. And he's an intern, he's going to eventually become a resident, and maybe even an attending at some point. But that means he's going to be on the show for a while, unless he gets killed off or unless he decides to transfer to another hospital. But he's going to be on the show for a while, and it's going to showcase more and more of his talent as the show goes on. And in Season 17, Episode 15, the episode Traditions showcases a lot of his acting work, and it's pretty awesome to see. I'm really excited for that. And the last one is Jeremiah Batsui. There's a reason why I bring him up. I knew he looked different when I watched Breaking Bad, and when I watched Better Call Saul, I found out he was Navajo. But Jeremiah Batsui is Omaha and Navajo, and I didn't know that for sure he was Navajo. And I wasn't at the point in my watching experience where I was looking at the show credits after the episode, but he's Navajo. If I saw Batsui, I'm like, oh, that's a freaking Navajo dude. Holy shit. But he just looked ethnically ambiguous, I guess. And now I look back at him, I'm like, God, he's painfully Navajo. What the hell was I thinking? Shame on me, Ian. But he was in Breaking Bad. He was in Better Call Saul. He made his debut as a child actor in Natural Born Killers, actually. So he's somebody that is going to continue to do work. I hear murmurings of him doing other stuff. One of the most notable things he did is he did voice acting work in Red Dead Redemption 2. And if you're a fan of Red Dead Redemption 2, you look up Jeremiah Batsui, you can see that he casted, he played Eagle Flies in Red Dead Redemption 2. And I only played the first one, did not play the second one yet. So at some point, I'm going to have to play that game just to hear Eagle Flies. I don't know how prominent he is in that game, but it sounds like he's a recurring character that's pretty prominent. In some podcasts that I heard with him, there was a lot of hush-hush attention he was given. well, hush hush, he had to sign like DNAs leading up to the release of the game because there was just a lot of secrecy around it. He had to read like a fake script for like a period piece Indian, it sounded like, just to get the role. But real excited for Jeremiah's future, and real excited to see him. So 3 actors, I'm going to name him again: Amber Midthunder, Robert Mesa, Jeremiah Batsui. Next time I do this native news update, I'll have some more names for you to look out for. And if you've heard of all 3 of these, that's great. Explore their filmography, see what they have going on. But I put Jeremiah Batsui last because I'm doing an episode on Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, because there's natives in both of those, not just Jeremiah Batsui. There's also, from the famous comedy duo, Navajo comedy duo, James and Ernie Sosi is in this. Ernie Sosi III, he makes an appearance in Better Call Saul. He passes Frank Ehrmantraut freaking on as they're switching duty as security guards. And I'm just like, that's James, that's Ernest Sosi, that's Ernie, oh my god. So I'm going to do an episode on that, just talk a little bit about what I know about the show and the native representation in it, because it's awesome. It's awesome. Holy shit, I almost signed off I'm sorry, I completely forgot. Just remembered Rezball. How could I forget this? It's like the biggest news. There's so much going on. I was so excited about Reservation Dogs and talking about that I looked at my notes again and I'm like, holy shit, I forgot to talk about Res Dogs. So Res Dogs, as you know, is a feature that is produced by Lebron James, the Spring Hill Company, and Wiser Entertainment. So LeBron James getting signed on as a producer, executive producer, that was huge because, it's LeBron James, Despite your opinions of LeBron James, you can't argue that he's one of the greatest players. You can't argue that he isn't one of the greatest players to ever play the game. So right now, like one of the best players in the NBA decides to be an executive producer for Rezball. Like, that's awesome. And this is going to be from Sydney Freeland, and she's the writer-director, and co-written by Sterling Harjo, who's doing Reservation Dogs. Sydney Freeland, if you may or may not remember her from Drunk Town's Finest, she directed that film. Jeremiah Batsui, whom I talked about a little bit earlier, he's in that, and that's a great freaking movie. If you've ever seen Drunk Town's Finest, if you haven't, go watch it. She also directed a great short film called Hoverboard. It's about, it's a short film. This little girl finds a hoverboard from the Back to the Future universe. Fucking awesome. And she also directed episodes of Rutherford Falls and Reservation Dogs, so definitely check that out. She directed episode 2, the Indian Clinic, in Reservation Dogs, and she directed 4 episodes of Rutherford Falls. But I'm just really excited about this because Rezball is casted by a Midthunder casting. Who we had on in the last episode. They're heading this up. We sent out some call sheets I'm sure you've seen circulating around, asking for native kids from 18 to 21 to play high school kids in this feature called Rezball. But what I think is awesome is they're going to be playing Navajo kids in the movie. And the whole story is, I've heard it's going to be like a little bit of a Friday Night Lights, a little bit of a Hoosiers feel, where when I hear Friday Night Lights, the movie, I think of like losing Bluey Miles, losing your star player, and you have to persevere even without the direction of the person who's most talented. So how do you still continue to win without having your most talented player? When I hear Hoosiers, I hear underdog story, small town. And it follows the Chusca Warriors, which is a high school team in New Mexico that was band together after losing their star player. They don't say how they lose him, but I assume it's probably something tragic and it's going to be awesome. Normally I'd be like, but finally, my basketball episode, the whole time I went and vented about, like, can we get a Rezball story? Can we finally get something? And son of a bitch, like a month later, this thing comes out. So hell yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be filmed in New Mexico, and I couldn't be more excited because, like I said in the Rezball episode, ball is life. And it's a piece of basketball, of the basketball fandom in this country that is sorely missing. Because even though Reservation Dogs takes place in Oklahoma, I can see my Rez experience. I can see my identity in that show. And even though Rezball is going to be taking place on the Navajo Rez, and it's going to be in Chusca, New Mexico, and he's supposed to be near the Navajo Rez. I don't know if it's a fictional Rez or if it's actually going to be a recount of like a true story, or based on true events. But it doesn't really matter because like we're going to all see ourselves in it, and I think that's awesome. And there was a quote in an article from the Hollywood Reporter that said basketball on the Res is like high school football in West Texas. It has a fanatical following that few sports can rival. You know, Sydney Freeland said that about this show. And Sydney Freeland's from Gallup, New Mexico, so she understands the hype. She understands like the fandom, the insane fandom around Rezball, the unhealthy, toxic fandom at times of Rezball. So it's exciting that she's writing it. Sterling Harjo is just like, he just gets all the kudos, he gets all the credit in the world, especially after this freaking piece of work. So that he put out with Reservation Dogs. So real excited for Rezball to come out. If you know anyone that's 18 to 21, you know, younger 20s to play in that can be in that film, like go try out for it. The worst they can say is no. Tell that to everybody that you tell them and show that casting sheet to. I'll put that casting sheet up on my Instagram page as well, my social media. The worst they can say is no. What are they going to say? Sorry, you know, thanks for coming here and auditioning for this film that LeBron James is co-producing and is written and directed by Sterling Harjo and Sydney Freeland. Sorry. Like, at least you can have the experience and you get a taste for what it's like. Maybe you don't have any acting experience and this is the first time you want to put yourself out there and try something and you're just like, wow, that's what it's like? That's what it's like to audition for something? I never knew. I'm going to go try it. Just try it. I swear to God, the worst they can say is no. They're never going to write back to you or get to you and say, oh, that was the worst piece of acting I've ever seen in my life. They specifically put on the call sheet, no acting experience necessary. Get out there, go try out for it. All right, everybody, now it's for real. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Talk to you later.